Yeah, we usually ask first if everybody's okay with it,
Oh,
but
I
too
think
late.
Zoom handles that right for us.
It tells you that it's happening and gives you like 10 seconds to do something, but yes.
So if you're not okay, I apologize. You have time before we actually kick it off to um, either tell me to stop or to drop off.
This is what happens when Anthony Shimano's not here.
Yeah, I know. We lose all structure. So normally, yeah, I guess I'll just give a few words about PhillyXP. Thanks for joining. If it's your first time, welcome. Nick, Anthony, and I have done this for quite a bit of time now. We have a lot of talks on PhillyXP. You can go back and look at the catalog, and I think the majority of them are on Anthony's YouTube. So if
Yeah,
at
at
some
least
point,
since we went virtual anyway, and
right? Yeah, so
so
we'll maybe post a link into the chat for folks that want to go back and see some of the cool talks that we've done before. I actually reference one of them in this talk. So why don't I just get started, if that's okay with everyone? All right. So software engineering etudes. One of the things that I try, so I'm very bad at slides. I thought maybe I'd use an AI image generator for all of the imagery. So I figured if people were interested, I could put the prompt and the style in all the slides so they could see it. I used the Night Cafe Dreamscaper XL Lightning engine for all of these images and themes. So in case you're wondering, Night Cafe is like a free one. You can generate credits and then make images. I know other people use other engines, but that's just the one that I came across and started using. So that's what all of these things are going to look like. They're going to be kind of weird. I know I included only one super weird one. I tried to just do the first one that showed up, but I kept one super weird one
those
at the end
fingers are
just
killing
because,
me.
yeah. So, so my name's Anthony Palumbi. I'm principal consultant at Locksmith Consulting. Been, doing the thing for about 25 years. Was introduced to the practice of etudes from a very fortunate moment in my career where I was able to spend time with Jim Shore working on an XP team. Jim Shore, is how Nick, Anthony, and myself all kind of came together and thought, XP is a good practice to share conversations with the world. So this practice came out of time spent with him. So it is not definitely not an original idea, and it's something that if you want more to learn about this specific practice, I think there are examples of it in Jim Shore's Art of Agile book as well. But father of three, and that's my LinkedIn if people are interested in looking at my LinkedIn. All right. So etudes are a musical thing, right? They're a practice that comes from music, right? So usually they're short compositions that help you play something, right? So they're a means to an end. Let's say that a song has some difficult chord transitions or maybe does, some maneuverings that are hard and you need to improve, finger dexterity or your rhythm or some other dynamics. People develop etudes to help you play the song. And I think that, there is a lot of parallels to, what we do in our technical world when we think about this stuff. And that's where I think the thought of etudes for software engineering kind of comes from. How can we practice specific things purposefully and focus on them so that way we can increase our technical skill? So some of the other characteristics that they have is that there are versions of it that have progressive difficulty, right? Especially depending on your own technical level. You might start off with, a simple version, a one-handed version of something, let's say, and then move on to two-handed and then move on to more dynamics. You can understand how that works. Iterative practice as well. You kind of repeat something, you build that muscle memory. That muscle memory then turns into performance, right? We see that in a lot of different ways. You practice free throws so that you make free throws in a game. Feedback and review, I think, is an interesting characteristic. When it comes to the musical version, People record themselves practicing. People also sometimes listen to themselves playing the music. And then a lot of times with music, there's a coach that, or an instructor that's helping you to improve. And I think that feedback and review, we'll see when we talk about it from a software engineering perspective, plays an important role in what we're trying to do. Creativity with constraints, love that. Put a box around something, try to solve the problem, right? So it's really about, rigidity around the problem at hand. So you need to do something with your fingers, find a way to make it so that you put some constraints on a set of moves and you practice those moves, and then those things teach you how to do the performance. Community and collaboration, I think these characteristics when it comes to the musical style is really about like orchestras, bands, right? They use certain practice techniques when they're together. But then, again, translating it to software, you're most times working with the team. And so collaborating and having that sense of community within the team can be very helpful. Just curious, do we have musicians on the call? Anybody done like regular etudes as part of their learning to be a musician?
For sure.
Great. All right. So the idea of intentional practice, right? Practicing with a purpose is not new. These books here are books that, they're not the only books, but they're books that I think are interesting that cover, this idea in cool ways. So like Peak, Secrets from the New Science of Expertise, really talks about how, to master any field, it almost requires purposeful training more so than talent. And, they talk about research and insights, and they have some illustrations about how with dedicated effort and, using the practice strategies that they're writing about, you can move up to an elite or a masterful level on what you do. Talent Code is a good one. That one's kind of focuses a little bit more about the brain and like the circuits of the brain and why practice does what it does. It's a really good book if you're into how the brain works, and he has some cool stories and talks about how, with the right environment and motivation, almost anybody can achieve greatness. So there's a cool message in there, and I think a lot of these have kind of that message as well, which is, I think, an important aspect to practice. Right? It's not intended to be something that should be a slog. It's really something that you use to become better, right? And I know we all kind of know it, but I think sometimes, when we get to the part of like, should we do it or how much time should we spend on it? We kind of lose that idea that, we're doing this to get better, so we need to dedicate ourselves to it. And we can talk some more about that. Let's see here. Made to Stick. Yeah, that's another one where, this one I think is interesting because if you've used some of the language apps like Duolingo, I think a lot of the techniques, I don't know if Made to Stick wrote about those techniques or Made to Stick invented the techniques and then Duolingo used them. I don't know the relationship there, but like retrieval practice and spaced repetition and, engagement and those things, you'll see those a lot in the apps where it's like you learn a set of words, you move on to some other words, and then they recall back to a previous lesson to review what you've learned before, and they kind of space those out. That book talks a lot about that kind of stuff. Grit is like a modern classic, I would think, talking about, sustained effort is more important than talent alone. So when we talk about these etudes, right, doing them periodically, right, or weekly or multi-weekly, and having that sustained effort makes a huge difference. And how, like, having that grit and having teams and people that have that grit usually lead to long-term success and long-term achievement of goals. Yeah, I'll just skip to the last one. So Good They Can't Ignore You. Cal Newport. He's awesome. If you've never read any of his stuff, he not only writes books, but he also does workshops. Cal, in this book talks about the idea that following your passion, which is a thing that we hear a lot of when, talking to people in their career, do what you love and you don't work a day in your life. that necessarily isn't the right move for career satisfaction. It's more about finding and developing valuable skills and practicing them. And then that leads to a successful and fulfilling career, because being valuable and being able to practice the things that are valuable is important. And I think that's pretty much it for the sales pitch in terms of, whether or not you should do these things, intentional practice, and like why it's a good idea. There's a great talk from Paige Watson from last May. That's on our YouTube, or it's on Anthony Shamana's PhillyXP playlist YouTube. It's called The ROI of Deliberate Practice, if you want to get into some of the nuts and bolts about, why practice can have a return on investment. Might be useful depending on your culture and your organization, about like how you want to maybe pitch this if it's something that you want to start, and you need
I
more
posted a
leadership.
link to the playlist, by the way, in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. All right. So this, I'm going to show a little video. It's a couple minutes long. I found this video when I was preparing for the talk. It is, I think it does a great job of kind of like in 2 minutes summarizing a lot of the things that Software Engineering Etudes do for people. And if you don't know who Harry Mack is, then it's a pleasure for me to introduce him to you, because I think he is absolutely one of the best content creators on YouTube. If you like freestyle raps, this guy is the best. So let me know if you can hear it. I think I set it up right.
Practicing is not just doing the thing. A lot of people might assume that like to practice freestyling, you just freestyle a lot every day, freestyle for 2 hours every day, and that's your practice. I am of the strong belief that that's not actually practice, although it is not nothing, right? It is valuable. I mean, if you do freestyle for 2 hours every day, will you get better? Yes, of course you're going to get better. Inevitably, you can get quite a bit better over time. But if you want to do anything at an elite level, I think you need to make time to actually practice. And what I mean when I say actually practice, it's identifying weaknesses, and then it's creating exercises with firm rules, essentially, creating little games for yourself that are aimed at chipping away at specific weaknesses so that you can improve upon them. And so practice is like highly regimented. And you have a specific goal in mind, and you create parameters so that it's very clear to you while you're doing the exercise if you're achieving the goal or not. And if you're not able to achieve the goal at a decent percentage, then you have to simplify the exercise. So it's like you're constantly like slowing things down, shaving away like excess so that you can like get right to the thing that you're trying to work on. And so that's what practice is. And it wouldn't be something that I would want to do on stage in front of people, because it might be like, okay, I'm going to lock in on this exact triplet rhythm with 1-syllable rhymes, and I'm going to do 4-bar phrases where I rhyme with the same thing all 4 bars. So off of the top, I get in the zone. I'm 1-to-1, I'm never no clone. I do my bars direct off the dome. I send these rappers all the way home. I am the one that sips out the cup. I keep it moving, never get stuck. I bring the thunder, rappers get struck. They hella low, but I'm hella up. And I would just do that for, 20 minutes maybe over the same beat looping, so there's no distraction of a beat changing, and there's no change in the tempo, so I can really lock in on this exercise. And so practice doesn't always sound great because it's not as it's not a performance, right? It's not and then the performance, on the other hand, is where you're bringing everything together in real time without the regimented structure, and there are no rules. And so the best way to sort of like summarize this is the Charlie Parker quote, where he reportedly said, Charlie Parker, the great bebop saxophonist, the inventor of bebop, legend has it, said something along the lines of, practice your scales, practice your chords, and then forget all that shit and just play. Practicing is not just.
So, yeah, I think, let's talk about some of the things that was said there, and, some of the general benefits of an etude style approach for practice, right? So not just doing the thing, right? And I think that's a trap. Maybe trap's the wrong word, but that's like a reality for a lot of software engineers, is that, they are always performing. They're always doing the thing. So, practicing is what you do all day if you're, if there's no delineation between practice and performance, right? And you will get better, right? You'll become a better developer with the more code that you write. But how do you take yourself up to the next level, right? And that's where I think he talks about identifying weakness and then creating something that attacks that weakness and allows you to practice it. And I think that's one of the strongest parts about etudes is you can tie an exercise to a weakness and practice it. Progressive difficulty, he mentions it there. If you're failing, you have to adjust, right? So you do a thing, try an etude, and if you find that it's too hard or you're not getting to any benefit from doing the thing, shave something off of it, make it simpler, and try to do something that allows you to exercise the thing that you want to exercise. And I have some example exercises that I'll share later that I've used with teams to help, kind of get there. So I'm trying to give a decent amount of practicality to this, as well as talking about the benefits. So that'll be coming. Technical versatility, it's available for all skill levels. And I think that's a reality for almost every team, is that you have a blend of people that have deep experience, you have people that have no experience, and you need to kind of find things that allow both of those people to work and practice on something together, right? And I think etudes can allow for that. Transferable skills, you can take the things that you're learning in these etudes and these muscles and these, knives that you're sharpening, and you can use them in other teams, on other jobs to solve other problems. I think that's pretty obvious. And the discipline and focus. And I think this is, again, a really strong piece of the etude. He says, create little games with firm rules aimed at chipping away at those weaknesses. And I think that's really the key, right? And they're highly regimented. There's a structure. It's short. It's very, very approachable. And it allows people to, focus in for the time that's needed, and then, showcase something and then move on and get back to work. Before I move to the next slide, any questions so far? Any comments? All right. So then why, this is just a slide. I think a lot of people already know some of this stuff, but I just wanted to call it out because I think a lot of these things can also be dealt with the structure of, the team-based etudes. So, why do people not practice? Well, they might not be motivated to. They are scared that they're not going to be good at it, right? I think fear of failure, probably I should change that to a fear of being vulnerable, which I think exists a lot on, software engineering teams. It's, imposter syndrome is a thing, right? We've all experienced it. You're hired to do a thing, and you come onto a team and they ask you to implement something and you're just like, I don't know what this is or how to even do it, right? And then that makes you maybe question your own self-value on the team. And I think, what I found with this is with etudes, you find that people just have differing depths of experience. Some people are very strong with the things that they know and are not as strong in things that they've never seen before. And then other people are just strong with like their ability to go out and try things, right? So they just kind of present differently. So I think that's one of the things that this does. Perceived lack of time. I mean, that's I think a reality for all of us, right? How many times have we said, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to learn this, I'm going to learn. For myself, it's playing the piano. I've probably started learning to play the piano 100 times, but I always run into life getting in the way because I have to practice it at night. I had young kids for a while, and playing the piano. I have an old, like a normal piano, not one that you could put headphones on, so it limited the hours that I could practice, and all that stuff kind of gets in the way, right? Perceived lack of time. They're all on me. They're not actually real. Sustaining focus, lack of structure and guidance. These are all things that I think etudes help with. Now, maybe the bigger picture is, why do companies sometimes prevent teams from practicing? And I think some of these are aligned with the individual ones, right? A perceived lack of time. We don't have enough time for that, right? We got to get these deliverables out. You're going to probably have heard that for a variety of things, not just, hey, we need to build learning into our culture or whatever. You know, leadership might not necessarily support it. They may not get it, depending on, you know, what type of organization you work for. They may not see the return on investment for doing practice. So if you go back to Paige's talk, that can build some ammunition. And then, you know, with the structure that I think this provides, it's, you know, it almost just blends in. They won't even notice it unless they're really looking. Culture conflict. So this one's a little deeper. You might have people that don't like each other on the team, and not liking each other makes the number 2 above, the fear of failure, the fear of motivation, a lot harder, right? Because you don't want to be vulnerable in front of somebody that you don't like. And, you know, I understand that that's a problem that can be solved. And I can, you know, I think there are some techniques in it. And, you know, sometimes you just have to restructure what you're doing to maybe like do it in a smaller group, or, you know, figure out other ways to work around that. And then the last one I think is really tough for teams where there's instability, right? If teams are constantly changing the members of the teams, it might be hard to generate a practice group. So, you know, finding a way to, you know, build that in, I think, you know, this structure allows for that, even if there is some team instability. Any other thoughts or comments on these things? Any other personal thoughts on why it's hard to practice? No? Okay,
No, you covered it. That was well said.
sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you covered the I like that switch up of fear of failure to fear of vulnerability. You know, I think there's sometimes not a fear, yeah, it's that fear of, like, you know, being fragile, presenting that you don't know something that maybe you think you should, or you think
Sure.
others think that you should even.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that is, and I was working with Nick and Anthony at the time when I first started doing Etudes. You know, I was a software engineer. That was the title that I had, and I, you know, had to stand up and say, I don't know how to do this thing, and that was tough. But it did create the opportunity for me to shed that and, you know, start learning how to do it. Right? I knew how to do other things. You know, obviously I got hired for a reason, but it was you know, that fear of not being able to say a thing. And, you know, I think having that moment with the team is important, and having that moment with individuals is important as well. And I have some, you know, thoughts on how to make that safer for folks. So we'll get into that. All right. So now we get into the meat of it. All right. What's the general format of this thing? So when to do it. I think it's really important to have a set time. My preferred time to do it is after stand up. If you guys don't do a stand up, you know, sometime first thing in the morning, I think is a preference for me. Energy is usually up. People are ready to get into things. And you know, I think that's a good time. Now, the reality is not everybody starts at the same time sometimes, right? Stand up might be in the afternoon or whatever, because you have different time zones working. So, you know, whatever constitutes like a set time for it. I think Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, we did it at lunchtime at or right before lunch or right after lunch. I can't remember. When we
I
were
think we did. Yeah, we did it like right before lunch. I
right.
think we varied the time a few over the course of things, but and when Jim was there, I think we did it like twice a day for a little while,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is a lot.
It is a lot, but you know, he was trying to improve some weaknesses that he saw, right? So,
Yep.
So yeah, I'd say choose a time. I prefer after stand up. I think there's also another thing that after stand up allows for. Depends on, I guess, your practices, but if you have a 16th minute that folks you know, ask questions or talk about things from the stand up, you know, it can sometimes allow for those conversations to just happen a little bit later, because I think sometimes the 16th minute gets chewed up inappropriately on things that aren't actual 16th minute things. So you basically book a calendar schedule, and then you can say, well, we'll look at it after the etude. And how long is it? It's 30 minutes. So I mentioned earlier, if there's like a lack of leadership support, I think if as a team, you introduced something that was 30 minutes twice a week, it would take a long time for them to really notice it. Just because if they're a team that doesn't support those things, they're probably not even really paying attention to how you actually spend your time anyway. So you can kind of slot this in there. But obviously you don't want to just, be underhanded. You want to see whether or not there's the capabilities to do it. And I can talk through some of those things as well. So 30 minutes. The way that it works is you kick it off with a description of the exercise. That typically takes 5 minutes, maybe less. You say, this is what we're going to be working on. The team gets about 10 minutes or, 10 minutes plus whatever time is left over from setting the stage to do the work. And then and that work is typically done alone. And then 15 minutes to present the work that was worked on. And I think this is a really important piece of it. So presenting the work is typically done at random. So, if you have one of those like random spinny wheels or random number generator or whatever, and that allows for sometimes people don't get to show, so it can like create some safety around always having to present, because I know that's difficult for some people. And if it's really difficult, or if you have folks that want to, you can maybe adjust it to say, okay, the people that want to go can go, and then the other people get chosen at random. But ideally, you're really only taking a couple people, 2 to 3. They get a couple minutes to showcase what they've worked on during the etude, and then you move on. And then you end the etude by getting rid of the results. You do not keep the results of the etude. Now, if you're doing, some diagramming, or if you're building, some like instructions or whatever, it doesn't matter how valuable those things are. You never keep the results. And it's really important, right? It's a super important thing. It creates safety, right? But if it's like some amazing solution to the company's greatest problems, there's a comfort to be known that it's only 10 minutes away from being made again, because you just did it 10 minutes ago, right? So the idea being is you don't want perfection. You want to do something that takes you 10 minutes and then you throw it away. There's a concept, I think morning pages is the example, where you wake up in the morning, you write 3 pages freehand, and then you get rid of it. You don't keep, those things. It's an idea to just kind of allow the juices to flow. And I think from a software engineering perspective, not keeping things is strange, and it would be difficult for some people, because, like I said, you put energy into it and you're trying to do something that's good, but it makes it so that you feel free to make mistakes. You feel free to not have something that's great, because you're not going to keep it. All right. Any questions on that, on the format? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just curious, like, what's the purpose or value in the presentation part of it? Because that's where I feel like it drifts from the musical metaphor, right? Like, I'm going to go and do this little slice of this thing I want to get better at, just over and over and over and over and over again,
Sure.
play the guitar in my own bedroom or whatever. So, like, obviously there's a purpose for it in, the context of programming. So I'm just kind of curious to hear that thought.
Yeah, for sure. I think the easiest way for me to phrase the value in the presentation is that it helps align the thought patterns of the team members. So if I'll choose an exercise that, I'll showcase some of the potential exercises later, but diagramming a piece of the code, right? So everybody go find a piece of the code, and they go and they diagram it using, let's say UML technique, class diagram, sequence diagram, something like that. Showing it off, I think, allows for the team members to be like, well, I didn't think that's how that worked, or, oh, that's how that does what it does. And then a conversation can happen from it. It can also create opportunities for someone to say, well, I'll use this technique to do something. And then somebody's like, oh, I never knew about that technique. So when you're playing music, right, the feedback part of it is from the sounds, right? How do you know that you're doing the etude correctly? You hear it. Well, how do you know that you're growing and getting better at, whatever it is that the exercise trying to showcase is that you're showing it to somebody else. And I think in software, considering how much of what we do is abstract, right? It sits in our heads. Aligning those thought patterns, getting people to start thinking the same and to start communicating the same about the code and the structure of code and what they think about code is super important. Good question. Thanks. All right.
Hey, Anthony,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, do you ever do the etude in like pairs or just as a group together, like mob program?
Potentially. I think that would be a more advanced technique. So if you're already mobbing, there's probably a good chance that there's already there's a decent amount of like thought alignment on things. Depending on your maturity level there. So I think it depends a little bit. I would consider it a more advanced technique because I think there is kind of like a growth that happens on doing things alone that you may not get if you're doing it in pairs all the time. It introduces other factors as well, like certain pairs, there's more of a dominant personality that can, affect things and stuff like that. So I think doing it alone at the start is probably the best move.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Thanks.
Cool. Good questions. Thanks. All right. So how to get started for this? So I think, as was mentioned in the video and by me, you have to find, what the team's weaknesses are or what they think they are. And you may already know this if you're part of the team or a leader of the team, you might see things that you think they are. But I think finding a way to ask the team about this is important. And one of the things that I think is super important is to make sure that it's inside the team's sphere of influence. So you can't, have an etude on our customer's a jerk, right? So, don't try to work on that. Try to say like, what do we need to do to improve as a team? And then build your etudes around that. Surveys can help, as a leader, if you're doing one-on-ones, doing that can help. I think, that's an important way to do it. So then sharing the approach, right? Talking with the team and saying, hey, we're do this and, kind of setting the stage about what they're going to look like and all that is important. And I'm just going to give some personal feedback here. Everybody's going to hate it. They're going to all be like, this is stupid. I have a personal anecdote of somebody on the team, unbeknownst to be on a Zoom call, saying that they don't want to go to the stupid etudes that, I was on the Zoom call. So it happens, right? So sharing the approach and then making it so that it's a idea that it's fun, I think is super important. And saying that it's something that, we're going to try to build together on. So that might take some maneuvering depending on, some of the factors that we had talked about before. And that's really what a big part of step 3 is about removing the uncertainty. So I think a really important thing, if you're not the leader of the team, well, if you are the leader of the team, you have full control over it. But if you're not the leader of the team, asking the leader of the team to share through email or some other written means that the artifacts of the etudes are not considered as part of any performance review process. I think that creates such a safe boundary around what happens in it. Like the attendance of them could potentially be considered a part of a performance review, especially if you're trying to, grow to the next level with your manager. But like what comes out of the etude, like what the practice creates should not be considered. And I think there is a really important aspect to it if you can get your leader to buy into that. And I can help if, somebody wants to reach out with me around how to craft those types of emails so that people feel safe around it. Trying to make it fun is important. It depends a little bit on, your own personality. JC was somebody that was excellent at that making things fun in terms of, you know, things that maybe we all didn't want to do. He found a way to make them fun. So, you know, it depends a little on your personality. But yeah, I think that's an important thing to try to think of. And then another thing to kind of remove the uncertainty, and this can go either way, but is to start with things that everybody knows already, right? So everything, things that people already feel comfortable with, or inversely, to start with something that nobody knows anything about, right? And that helps with kind of like, especially when you have your leads or whatever, and they go up and, you know, they've created something that's wrong. You know, that's okay, right? This is maybe a person that you think is the strongest developer in your team, and they don't know, you know, how to do a project Euler problem or something. You know, that I think builds a lot of character on it. So once you get to that level, now you can schedule the time on the calendar. So it's actually on the team's calendar, just like stand-ups are or whatever. I think it's super important for it to be there. And then I think you can move it, right? So I use the manager tools framework for managing teams. You know, one of the things that they say is you can move but not miss your one-on-ones. I think this is similar. You can move them, like if, you know, there's production issue or something and you need to deal with it after stand up, you move it, but try to find another time to do it that week. Don't skip it. Don't lose a week, because if you skip 1 week, you're more likely to skip 2 weeks, and then you know, you basically have to start over when you want to start again. I feel like that's a big requirement. Any questions there? All right. So some examples, right? So I think the one that I would start with, the one that I think is the most valuable, is communicating about the code, about the structure of the code with UML. UML has many forms of communication, you know, class diagrams, sequence diagrams, etc. You know, I don't think it's a requirement that everybody becomes experts in UML. I just think that the team has to level up where they can draw pictures that look similar and describe the code in ways that everybody can understand. And, you know, that's UML's job, right? That's what it was created for. So starting there and then finding, you know, the right version of it that works for you is, I think, really important. And to me, this is the number one, you know, weakness that most teams have. There's areas of the code that they don't understand. There's, you know, parts of the app that is, you know, this is Chuck's area. Nobody else looks at it but Chuck. And then, you know, Chuck goes on vacation or wins the lottery, and now there's a problem, right? And somebody has to come in and figure it out. And what is usually happening there? They rewrite it, right? And then it becomes somebody else's thing that rewrote it, and you know, the problem just perpetuates, right? So using UML to communicate on code, I think, is important. So what does that look like in practice? Set the stage, you show up to the thing and you say, today we're going to look at the importer. So everybody go find a section of the importer and draw a class diagram or a sequence diagram about some process that has to do with the importer, right? You might not have an importer in your code base. You might have some other thing, but the idea is whoever sets the stage picks the thing. They all go and they draw their diagrams. They can do it using, you know, draw.io or on paper, whatever works best for the folks. And then after that, you pick a few people at random and they present their drawings to the group. So that's what that would look like. What you'll find is the first drawings are going to be absolutely terrible. I mean, unless you have somebody that actually knows UML, which I think is pretty rare nowadays. But if you do have somebody, they're going to have better drawings, and that's okay. They can showcase what good drawings look like. But what you'll find, if you continue to do it, is that those UML drawings that you're practicing start showing up in your planning meetings. They start showing up in your team huddles. When somebody said, hey, can you look at something real quick? Instead of like starting with the code, you might draw a quick UML diagram to say, look, this is what I'm looking at. And you will see that. That's been proven multiple times in my career that is where it goes. And it's really important. And it makes the team better because they can actually talk to each other about things that are complicated simply. Code katas. That's a pretty popular one. So people might go to you know, Project Euler, or there's like a guy who has a GitHub with awesome katas, or like Code Wars. There's a bunch of services that provide coding challenges. I think every December there's the Advent of Code. These are great. I mean, they're good things to work on. I think the time limit is one thing, and it can be a little discouraging to some folks because you only have 10, 15 minutes, and you know, sometimes you get to the end and you didn't solve the problem, but that's okay, right? Trash it and then go back to it the next time and try it again, right? And you'll be able to move faster to the end, and you'll also have spent a little back cycles trying to solve the problem. So I think, you know, if you know, coding skills is a problem on the team, you can use the code katas to kind of like start getting that through. And I see, Paul, you have you put a note in here about some katas that have 30 minutes or less in them. So that's great. That's a great resource to try to use. Technique kata. So this is an interesting one. I kind of coined that term. I don't know if it's actually a good one or not, but what this is trying to handle is, hey, we want to have more understanding of our build pipeline, right? So how do we create a new build pipeline, right? So that's like, you know, doing a thing, right? How do we handle merge conflicts if we have a merge on, you know, a merge conflict on this file? So just create a merge conflict, have everybody work on it, you know, and then showcase how they, you know, what tool did they use, what editor do they use, how did they make a decision about which one to choose, you know, all that stuff. I think those are important things. Reviewing an active PR. This is a great one. So you go and you take whatever active PR, like try to pick a meaty one, and everybody goes away for 10 minutes and starts to review, and then comes back and says, these are the comments that I had on the PR. It's really great because everybody kind of focuses. You only have 10 minutes, right? Well, let's be honest. Sometimes people don't even spend 10 minutes on a PR, but if you were to spend 10 minutes, like, you know, you're going to focus on different areas, and like what they focus on, those things come out and actually make for really good conversation and team kind of, again, aligning thought patterns. New product exploration. You know, how does this API work? Let's all try to work on this. I actually have an example in my life around this one where we were pulling in a new data API and we wanted to do an etude on it, and the majority of the folks tried to connect to the API, and then pretty quickly found out that, you know, you needed a key from the vendor in order to do something with it. So they all got stalled. Somebody else saw that and they went to the documentation, pulled in the example data set, and just plugged it into the app and showed like, oh, this is where we would use it. So again, it creates like, you know, different techniques on how people try to solve things. And then it also helps. It's like, oh, well, we need to go get that. We need to go get that key, right? Like it like that 10 minutes starts the ball rolling on a thing that can become bigger. Refactorings. Go take some weird section of the code and refactor it for 10 minutes, right? I know that like refactoring requires tests and, you know, all the stuff, but again, this isn't about, you know, nailing a perfect thing. You know, what would happen if you know, just ripped out a section of code and try to isolate it, make it testable? You know, what would the impacts be, right? And then talk about those impacts with everybody. So you just get 10 minutes to go, you know, rip through a piece of code and take a look at it. And then there's special ones. These are ones can be fun. I did one with a few people that are on the call now where I called the presentation to the CEO. So setting the stage, I need to do a presentation to the CEO. I need to describe what this system does. I need 2 slides from you, and you got to give them to me in 10 minutes. You go away, team goes and makes those 2 slides, whatever they look like, and then we present them, and I decide which one I would actually take into you know, into the conversation with the CEO. So I think that's a good one. And that one actually creates interesting dynamics about, you know, new people sometimes have better insights on what the system does than older people that have been with the thing. Just kind of that changes the dynamics of things. No mouse tasks, right? Can you use the app with no mouse, right? You know, try to do this task without using the mouse. Or like write instructions to you know, to do X. How would I make this change. I don't want you to actually make the change. I want you to write out the steps that you would have to do to make the change. And then we all share those steps. So those are, again, ways of changing up the dynamics, but working on, thinking about the code, maybe trying to solve something, but also making it a little special, making it more fun for the team. All right. Thoughts on any of those? Any comments? No?
The one thing,
Okay.
the one thing I've noticed about code katas real quick is that sometimes it's they don't fit well with the idea of focused practice. Because not all of them are as obviously like it's not clear what the technique or skill you're practicing is, other than like try to solve a problem in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, which is useful, but maybe not like as obvious a thing.
Yeah, for sure. I know that there are some that are focused on like TDD and stuff like that. So, you might be able to like find ones that get you to what, what you're trying to improve on. But no, it's a good point. And, sometimes that's okay, right?
Yep.
Don't skip the meeting just because, you're tired of trying to draw UML diagrams. Like throw one of those in there and see where it goes. Okay. So I've mentioned, so there's another comment. Oh, I mentioned a few of these things already, but my experience, this is what happens to teams. Their confidence goes up. They feel better talking about things. They feel better working together. They feel better about the systems that they support. I think that's happened every time. Creating opportunities for other improvements. So when you have this time booked after stand up a couple times a week, 30 minutes, you'll find people start getting creative about what things they want to try, what things they want to work on. I have an anecdote from my personal life. I had a knee problem that was due to, my IT band on my hip, the band that connects your hip to your knee, and it was my knee was killing me. And at that point in my life, I was going to the gym frequently. When the doctor said, well, to fix this, you need to introduce this exercise, I was already going to the gym. I could introduce the exercise to fix it. It wasn't a big deal. Now, if I wasn't going to the gym, I would have to start going to the gym in order to fix the knee problem that I was having. And it would be much less likely for me to actually make that drastic of a change. So opportunities for improvement come from the fact that you're already practicing things, and you'll see the team becoming more willing to make changes to their style because they are already in the mode of doing that. Diagramming becomes the norm. I've mentioned this already. You start seeing diagrams on whiteboards. You start seeing diagrams in Slack. I think that is, you give somebody a tool that's useful, they will use it. And that's what teaching them how to communicate with UML does. More refactorings more often. Once people understand the larger code base more, they are more comfortable to refactor. It's common sense, and that happens a lot. And then I think one of the big things here about it, and it's just, it's a real nice benefit when you get to the point, is not knowing something is a lot less scary. And I think it just generally creates a better atmosphere for conversation and disagreement within the team. All right, so this next slide has a little bit of a creepy picture in it. I apologize. This was one of the ones that I chose. It was not the creepiest, but this was one of the ones for Etudes on a software engineering team. But any questions from the stuff that I covered? Any thoughts? Is this something that anyone thinks they can start doing on their team?
I mean, I'll
Well,
say we do some of the categories that you've mentioned on a weekly basis. So something I took away from this was like more ideas, because I feel like, I don't know, we might have been getting stale a little bit on some of them. We do a lot of katas, we do a lot of diagramming, but like we just have one guy in the corner who yells about accessibility occasionally. It might be nice to like, no, for the next 20 minutes, we're actually going to try to like do our knowledge base articles that we send to customers, but without a mouse, that type of thing. So I
Sure.
appreciate that, like additional ideas of things to do.
Great.
Feeling inspired.
Awesome.
And I love all the
Yeah.
artwork.
Oh yeah. It's it was surprisingly normal. I think again there was a few weird ones, but they were surprisingly normal once I got into the groove.
Yeah, but they were all a little fun. I loved seeing that drum set with like 200 pieces and nowhere to sit. I have a question though.
Yeah.
Uh, like how valuable do you think it is for an individual to just do this in a silo? I mean, you're kind of pitching that it's probably most valuable, especially in the workplace, to like do this with some people. That's how you do the presentation. That's how you get feedback. It's how you get even more benefit from the exercise of it, right? But I'm thinking about myself, not even at work, but like just in, personal projects and
Sure.
different endeavors. And anyway, I'll let you
Yeah.
know.
I think I mean, I think there's value in it, right? As long as you use the techniques that were mentioned kind of in the video and then also by me, right? Are you practicing with a purpose? Are you creating a structure where it's hard but not impossible and you're learning something to do it? Can you do it repetitively so that you get better at it and then make it a little bit more hard for yourself, right? I
Hmm.
think that's really the goal. And if you can do that by yourself, you will get better as an individual. If you can do it with the team will get better as a group.
Thank you.
I would think that it probably is good to choose something with like success criteria you feel good about measuring yourself also. So like,
Mm.
if you can tell when you understand code, then being like having the exercise be, I'm gonna pick some gnarly code from the code base and understand it in 10 minutes or whatever, then like you probably have a pretty good idea whether you did that or not when you get done with it. And you can ratchet down the time or other things to work on it.
Yeah, setting goals is important, right? What are you trying to achieve with the time that you're spending? Now, when you're an individual, the 10-minute time, right? Like, I think the Harry Mack video says he would do that for 20 minutes, right? Like the timing and the structure of it can change a little bit, but make sure you do have structure, right? The reason that I think the 30-minute window works is because it just slots right into a work day, right? And it can be done with the team. But if you're by yourself and you find that you have an hour a night to do something, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do an hour of time, right? Find some way that works that you can sustain and do that.
Okay.
Great. Well, if there's no other questions, I just want to say thank you for your attention and participation. It's appreciated. And then, feel free to reach out if you have any questions or guidance, or if you're going to start this journey. I mentioned, helping out with that email. I have examples of emails that I've sent. If you need if you want to talk through what an exercise could look like, I'd be happy to share it.
And we'll definitely get the talk posted up on the same playlist that I posted a link to earlier. So if anybody wants to watch it again or share it with anyone else.
Great. Thanks, Nick. All right. Thanks all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Anthony.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. That was a great talk.
Thank you. This was really helpful. Thanks, everyone.